Welcome to Thoughts for Change Makers, LinkedIn Live, where we challenge the status quo, elevate performance, and foster exponential growth. Today, let me introduce Dr. Paige Williams. She is an author of not only one book. Please, can you share with us the books?
I can. Here we go.
Yeah.
3 or 4. Yeah.
Yes, and I think one more might be on the way as well.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
Paige is a researcher, PhD in organizational behavior. She's a trusted advisor and mentor to senior leaders across business, government, education, and beyond. She uses a potent blend of neuroscience, psychology, and her own 20 plus years of international business leadership experience to surface uncomfortable truths and help leaders to see the rules they need to break in order to break through and lead themselves, their teams, and their organizations to thrive. So, welcome, Paige.
Oh, thank you, Lizon. I know that you are challenged with a cold today and not feeling 100%. So thanks so much for going ahead with this and having me on the show.
That's my pleasure. And so, one quick question I like to ask to all of my guests, what would be your definition of team performance?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question, because a question I often ask teams and leaders is, what does good look like? And I reckon it's such a useful frame. I use it all the time in my life, personal and professional worlds. And what does good look like helps us understand, what are we orienting towards? What are we looking to have more of? And in my book, Own It, which is about accountability, I talk about this in teams, and it's kind of through the lens of accountability, but I reckon it's much broader than that, because it speaks to something that sits underneath the essence of high-performing teams, and we're going to dive into that when we talk about anti-fragility. So I reckon it's the answer to these 5 questions. I'm just going to read them direct from the book. So I reckon high-performing teams are able to say yes to these 5 questions. Do I feel safe to stuff up, slip up, and learn? Do I feel safe to succeed and grow? Do I feel safe to share my weaknesses? Do I feel safe to shine in my strengths? And do I feel safe to show up as authentically me? And I reckon if teams and team members and the team collectively can say yes to those 5 questions, well, I call them the 5 safety questions, most of the time, then they're going to be, it's high performance is inevitable.
And also, you just mentioned something I want to double click on, because I'm sure that people joining us, they might have this question as well. What is anti-fragility? What does it mean?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Lizon, because not all of us have come across the word. In fact, I first discovered it in Mark Manson's book about hope, the one with the swear word on the front. And I was reading the part of Mark's book, and I came across this word anti-fragile. And I'd never heard of it before, so I kind of Googled it. And then I realized the book had been written by an author called Nassim Nicholas Taleb. Now, Taleb was a market trader. He was really into economics and market trading. And he found that there were certain organizations, economies, industries that actually benefited from the ups and downs of the share market, right? So in times of great disruption, somehow these industries or these organizations, their share price came out stronger. And so he started to study it, started to study patterns and trends. And he looked at it not only through economic lens, so like share markets, he looked at it through socio-political systems as well. So look, his book is pretty dense. If you like a really dense read, if you like kind of your equivalent of spinach in your reading, go and read Anti-Fragile by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. But as I read it, I was like, wow, this is amazing, because my background is organizational psychology, as you said. I've been a leader. I love working with leaders. I'm a systems thinker, so I'm always looking for where are the leverage points in any system, whether that's a family, whether it's a team, whether it's a whole organization, whether it's a community. Where are these leverage points whereby if we make an improvement at that point, then the ripple effects that come out from it kind of create even more positive change. And so I love working with leaders because I reckon leaders in any system are the most potent leverage point we've got. So as I was reading Nassim Nicholas Taleb's work, as I was reading Anti-Fragile, his book, I was like, whoa, what would this mean for human systems? What would it mean for leaders, teams, organizations, families, communities? What would it mean for them, not just to survive disruption and challenge and change, but actually to learn to thrive through it, so that in some way they benefited rather than were broken by the reality of our lived experience now, which has disruption, challenge, and change at its core. So anti-fragile is this idea that we are not fragile, we don't break when things get stressful, we actually in some way get better.
And can you share an example maybe with the work that you've done, maybe with a team, organization on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, one of the things that we know has disrupted the world in the last couple of years is COVID, right? It kind of blew everything up and was very disruptive, very challenging, lots of change going on. And yet, if we look at a kind of at a team level, but not a specific team level, the work flexibility that's come from that, and the ability for teams now to work in different spaces and places and still connect effectively and do work effectively together is an element of anti-fragility that's come out of our COVID experience. So we're better for it. Did we enjoy COVID? Not so much. I live in Victoria. We spent 2 years shut down. I certainly didn't enjoy that so much. And yet I can still see that even personally, there are experiences that I only could have gone through because of that set of challenging circumstances that I've learned from, that I've grown from, that I've in some way expanded my knowledge, my understanding, my wisdom about me and the world around me because I had that experience. So I reckon that the way that teams work together there is the opportunity for anti-fragility to have come out of our challenging COVID experience. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. And you also talk about accountability, right?
Yeah, I do.
That's one of the books you show at the beginning. Like, are there any link between anti-fragile and accountability for teams?
Absolutely. It's so funny because I wrote Becoming Anti-Fragile, which is this book, the Blue Book. This was the first book that I wrote. And I wrote this, ironically, before COVID. So it literally was being published. It was at the printers in February 2020 as everything started to, emerge around COVID. And I actually rewrote the preface to that book as it went to print in March to kind of acknowledge what was going on in the world. And so anti-fragile, if we look at, I think I'll share a slide. This might be the easiest way for me to talk about this.
Please, let's do that. Yeah.
So on the screen now, we've got this kind of continuum where at one end, you can see that we've got fragility, and in the middle, we've got resilience. And at the other end, we've got anti-fragility. So I've just spoken to the fact that anti-fragile is when we in some way expand, which is why that's a balloon, yeah? Our capacity, our understanding, our capabilities expand through our experience of struggle, through our lived experience of disruption, challenge, and change. Now, the other end of that is fragility, where actually we don't improve through it, we break in some way. And we feel a sense of overwhelm because we're fragile. What's being asked of us is too much compared to what we have or what we feel we have to available to give. And I just want to talk for a moment about resilience in the middle. I'm just going to come back off of the slide because I'm pretty passionate about this. I reckon resilience is actually what sits behind our epidemic of burnout. We're hearing a lot about burnout right now, Liz.
Oh, yes, a lot.
And I've been involved in research in Australia, in the UK, in the US and Canada over the last 5 years that's kind of tracked how thriving and well-being are going in workplaces. And burnout is something very real, like 2 out of 3 Australian workers, and we went out to the Australian market in May this year, are saying that they're experiencing burnout. So they feel a sense of exhaustion, they feel a sense of cynicism, they feel a lack of autonomy. And those are kind of the three ingredients of burnout. But resilience, I reckon, is what sits underneath it, because I've taught resilience as part of Wellbeing Science and my teaching at Melbourne University and in organisations and leaders. It's been a central part of what we think good looks like, which is why this question is so important, for years, for decades. And yet actually resilience asks us to bounce back in some way. So something happens where kind of impacted by a disruption or a challenge, and we're knocked back. And then resilience says no, and then we come back to where we were before. We're able to rebound, which is why in that slide, the picture is of a ball, right? Because we're bouncing back to where we were before. The challenge with resilience is that it's kind of just not fit for purpose for our context anymore. So I was born in the early 1970s, and I grew up in the UK where we had those phones where you stick your finger in and you watch the thing go round, and then it comes back, and that's the first number dialed. I mean, what an exercise in mindfulness that was, to dial a long number, right? But resilience is like trying to use that kind of phone in our iPhone world. It's not fit for purpose, because resilience assumes that we're going to have this period of disruption, of challenge, of change. We're going to have an experience of being knocked back by it. So it's not that we deny that we're impacted by it. We're then going to have time to bounce back to where we were before. And then there's kind of going to be a pause before the next time we're impacted by something. And yet the reality is, with the scale, with the frequency of disruption and change, and this was writ large during COVID, we are constantly bouncing. We're like the Duracell bunny or Tigger out of Winnie the Pooh. And of course we get exhausted. Of course we do, because that burns us out. And it actually only brings us back to where we were before in an environment that is constantly changing. And so what happens is, coming back to where we were before means that actually we're not far enough forward, and we're losing and losing and losing traction in terms of kind of keeping up and being able to cope with the context that we're in. So anti-fragile, if we go back to the slide for a minute then, resilience doesn't get us where we need to be, because when we feel fragile, we're in overwhelm. When we are in resilience, we're bouncing back, but it just isn't fit for purpose given our context now, which is why anti-fragility is about expanding our capacity, our capabilities, our skills. And I use the overarching term, our wisdom, in navigating the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environments that we live and work in now, because it's not even that it's just contained to our workplaces anymore. It's kind of here, there, and everywhere.
I'm having a bit of silence now to let people infuse what you just mentioned. And by the way, if anyone wants to ask questions to Paige, please pop them into the comment. I will be able to share them in the screen.
Would love that. But I'm just going to come back, Lizon, because I've put that there as a frame. But your question was, what's the connection then between anti-fragility and accountability, right? And so the thing is, I wrote book one, and then I started teaching and speaking and coaching around anti-fragility. And about 12, 18 months in, I went, something's missing here. And it was accountability. Because without accountability, we are constantly fragile, because no matter what we do, whether it's coaching, teaching, learning about anti-fragility, whether it's high performance efforts with our team, whether it's organizational transformation, whether it's delivering a client project or program to time, if we haven't got accountability, none of that matters, because it's just like flushing water down an open drain, because nothing sticks. And so actually accountability is kind of the prequel, I reckon, to everything and anything. But specifically as well to anti-fragility, because unless we're going to be accountable, unless we're going to own what's ours to own and invite others to do the same, unless we're actually going to roll up our sleeves and do what we've said we're going to do, we're just wishing and hoping.
Yeah. I have a picture of a boat and we don't know where we are going. It's like the boat is drifting away.
That's absolutely it. And partly because no one's committing to navigating and no one's on the engine or the oars to actually direct it to get momentum for it to move in some way. Yeah. Love that picture.
Yes. And okay, so now it's clear like why accountability is like the link between anti-fragile and accountability. And is there anything, and why did you, by the way, I saw on your slide you have like a hair balloon, so we understand why resilience is the ball and bounce back, but what about the air balloon? Why did you choose this picture?
Well, this is the idea that actually anti-fragile is about expanding and lifting. Okay, so it's about coming up and out. And the reason for that is because if we engage with, so let me come back a minute. So life is hard, right? Life is hard.
Yes.
It's not straightforward. The road to life is not a 6-lane freeway with brand new surfacing and no one else on it. And we're just able to kind of go along really fast and make maneuvers really easily and simply. No, it's more like, I don't know, Rome in rush hour with lots of potholes, lots of people, lots of bibbing on horns, and, some really steep hills that are very narrow and double parked. Like that is the nature of life. So once we are able to accept that and accept that actually struggle is an inherent part of the lived experience, then we're able to engage with it from this position of anti-fragility. And as we expand our capacity to deal with struggle, as we have accepted that, yeah, of course it's going to show up, doesn't mean that I'm broken, doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong. It's just part of the journey of life. And some bits of the road are steeper than others. Some bits are not surfaced as well. Then we're able to actually use the experience of struggle, not that we enjoy it, not that we try and create it, but when it shows up, we're able to take this approach and this orientation towards it that says, okay, where is the learning in this for me? How is it that there is a golden nugget for this in me, for me in this, that means that in some way I am expanded through this experience? Now, I want to double click on that word expanded, because it doesn't mean more, right? In fact, some of the wisdom that comes out of our challenges and our struggles is the realization that actually we need to put some stuff down, right? We need to let go of that belief, let go of that expectation, let go of that goal, or readjust it in some way, because it actually doesn't serve us anymore.
Correct.
Equally, it can be about picking up things, right? Picking up things and adding those to our anti-fragile backpack. But what we want to have is the right stuff in the backpack to help us navigate life, rather than being weighed down by things that don't help us and don't serve us, and not have the things that would. And this is why it's an expansion, because it's okay, as I navigate and have this experience of challenge, which may be hard, like I talk about, one of the metaphors I use, I talk about chewing on life, like chewing on the gristle of life, because it's not always easy to get through. Sometimes we need to chew our way through it. And so how is it that as we do that chewing, we're actually getting better at understanding how we can navigate that, avoid the chewing if it's possible, but if we have to chew through the right stuff rather than the stuff that we don't need to.
And that's the tricky bit, right? How people know what to put in the backpack and what to let go of the backpack. And also, I have a notion, I don't know if you, like, I feel there is something that you are resourceful. So no matter what goes through your way, you are resourceful. And maybe someday, you wake up and you wish to have those obstacles because you know you can handle them. Exactly. And because you know you're resourceful and that you can get onto them.
This is it. It's not that we're broken and need fixing in any way. That's absolutely not. But it is about understanding there is an expansion opportunity, an invitation in every challenge experience. And if we orient ourselves to challenge in that way, it means that we're less likely to have a, oh God, there's something wrong, and kind of move away from it and feel like in some way we're broken or make someone or something else wrong, rather than accepting this is the reality in front of me. This is what we need to deal with. How do I do this in the most effective way that serves me and or the others and or the situation? And there's a question. I'm about to show a slide, and I know that we change our perspective on this. So I reckon this is the question. If you remember nothing else from our conversation, everyone, take this question away with you and just use it again and again and again. This is the anti-fragile heuristic. The question to ask yourself is, how can I be better coming out of this than I was coming in? And this idea of better is this wisdom, right? It's this, have I learned something? Is there a perspective? Is there a realization that actually I need to let go of that belief, that I need, that is limiting me, that actually I need to reach out to that person and find out their perspective rather than assuming that I know? Is it that I need to find out more information about this? Is it that I just need to keep practicing this so that I can build my capacity in it? Because right now I'm really struggling with it. Like, where is the wisdom and the learning? And this question speaks to that. How can I be better? Better not meaning more, better meaning wiser, having a deeper understanding of yourself, of others, and of the world in which we're operating and the context in which we're operating.
Okay, and we have an interesting question about this one from Sophie. How do we evaluate this?
Yeah, so one, a very specific way you can evaluate this is that I've written the Anti-Fragile Survey. It's at theantifragilesurvey.com. It's a free survey. You get personalized reports, and it's based on various sections in the book. So it kind of assesses how much disruption have you got in your world, what's your level of thriving, and that speaks to the gap that there might be between what you feel you have to give compared to what the demands are in your environment and on you. And then it looks at the robust principles, which are 6, like how can I be better coming out of this than I was coming in, is a heuristic. Yeah, it's something that keeps us on track. And there are 6 others of those that spell out the word robust, and the survey measures how much you're using those currently. And then it also assesses what I call the building blocks of anti-fragility, which is anti-fragile energy, your physical, emotional, and mental energy. Anti-fragile attitudes, which are constructive attitudes, courageous attitudes, and confident attitudes. So your degree of each of those. And then finally, the third building block. So we've had energy, attitudes, and the third one is mindset. So do you have a growth mindset, this idea of leaning into learning? Do you have a reflective mindset, whereby you're able to actually reflect on what's happening and adjust according to what's going on? And do you have a benefit mindset? So rather than playing a short-term game, are you actually looking at what the mid to long term? Are you looking beyond just immediate returns and looking at strategically investing into yourself and others and situations? Because short-termism is one of the things that makes and keeps us fragile. So the survey measures all of those things, and it ties them into your work engagement, your life satisfaction, and your job satisfaction. So if you wanted to do that, it takes about 20 minutes. If you wanted to do something a little bit more informal than sitting down taking a survey page, then I think it's really about connecting into how do you respond when you are faced with a challenging situation. And if you can sense and feel and hear on your internal narrative that you are moving away from feeling like struggle is something wrong, means something has gone wrong in you or is something to be avoided, and orient yourself to, I'm not necessarily going to enjoy this, but how can I benefit from it in some way? Because we can't always go. There's a great children's book called We're Going on a Bear Hunt. Do you know it, Lizon? It's a
No, I don't know this one.
All right, so it's a beautiful picture book. I loved reading it to my girls as when they were little, and it's about a family going on a bear hunt, and they go through lakes, and they go through grass, and they go through a swirling, whirling snowstorm. And as they reach each of these kind of challenges, their families say, we can't go over it, we can't go under it, we've got to go through it. And that's exactly the same with the challenges in life. Some of them we can't go over and we shouldn't go under. We've actually got to go through them. And so reflecting on how you are engaging with the challenges that you do have to step through, and checking, what's my internal dialogue? How am I speaking to myself about what's going on here? And then bringing that question, holding that, how can I be better coming out of this? Where's the wisdom in this? Where's the opportunity for expansion in this? I reckon that's the quickest way for us to connect into, am I being anti-fragile in this moment, with this moment?
And let's double click with Sophie, but because I think I like it as well, like the long term versus the short term. Why do you think people fall into a short-termist approach by default?
Yeah,
because it requires energy, effort to be more into a mid to long-term approach.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there are a couple of things. One is that we're wired for short-term results because we like to have a dopamine hit. We like to feel that we're making progress. We like to feel that we're achieving, or that we are in some way creating certainty in our environment. And short-term returns give us that sense of certainty because there's a short feedback loop. Yeah. I think also that as we become more disrupted, more uncertain, it becomes more of a risk to invest in the mid to long term. Because, and look, research is showing this, that trying to predict anything beyond about 6 months is more or less pointless, because the pace of change in our context has increased so much. And so it can feel a bit kind of, well, why would I bother? Like, anything I do now, it's going to have changed so much by the time we get there that, I'm wasting my time, effort, and energy. And yet we know that if all we ever are doing is looking for the return that we get tomorrow or next week or next month, those big strategic goals that we do need to be making progress towards get left behind. And we get that urgent work is done rather than the important work that often does have that mid to long-term return. So I think it's about, we're wired to get a short-term return because we like it. We like the short feedback loop. I think there's an element of the disruption uncertainty that makes us go, well, I don't even know if this is really going to make any difference because it's going to have changed so much. And I reckon one way to counter those things is to change our metric. I reckon, and I speak to teams about this in terms of what does good look like. How is it that we measure progress in the direction that we know we need to be going rather than outcomes? And I think these words I'm using, like orientation and directionality, mean that it's not necessarily about being absolutely specific about what the outcomes need to be in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years' time. But there is an orientation and a directionality that we are progressing towards. And it's almost like, and as that comes closer and more into focus, then we will get more specific on the outcomes required. But that doesn't mean we're not thinking about the mid to long-term directionality and the progress we need to make in order to keep moving in that direction.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to hear that, because I can see it over and over. Like sometimes, I'm asking people, like, you're at a red light, and you still cross it, and you don't get hurt. Was it a good decision?
Yeah.
And people will say, some of them will say yes, but the process, if you focus on the process, it's a red light, so no, you stop. You don't focus on the outcome, because It's about the process, like, and the outcome. Like, if you focus on the process and you make sure that you get more of the good outcome, to mention your word, like what are the good outcomes, and focusing on what is a process that is gonna enable us to elevate the probability of having these good outcomes that we want to more of.
That's
And
true.
focus, and with this feedback loop, refocus on this process and make sure that the process is, and that's even simpler. Your brain won't have to think of all the time because you have a process, so you can rely on the process over time.
And this is the thing, is that that our focus needs to shift into, rather than what is the outcome, what enables the outcome, and then keep that going. And that's how we make progress. And that way the outcome will take care of itself. The simplest example I can think of for this is when you think about losing weight. It's actually about input outputs. It's about what choices you make about how you move and what you eat. And if you just focus on that rather than weighing yourself every day or every week or every month, then the numbers are going to shift. And so it's who is it that uses this? I think it might be James Clear. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, talks about how it is I don't know if he calls it the system, like focus on the system rather than the outcome.
So goals are for losers as well, this book. And the author, and he is explaining that as well. So he says that goals are for losers and that you should focus on system, because as a goal, if your goal is to lose 5 kilos in 3 months, each and every day you will ask yourself, did I lose 5 kilos? No? Then I'm a loser. And then you keep that as an identity. I'm a loser because I haven't lost those 5 kilos. But if you have a system, if your system is, and you talk to your identity about, I am a healthy person. And so what a healthy person would do, they would eat healthy and maybe go to the gym or practice sport every day. So every day you do 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and ultimately at some point you will lose this 5 kilo. And all the time you are a winner, because at the end of the day you can ask yourself, was I behaving as a healthy person? Did I go to the gym? Yes. So it's a mindset shift.
Absolutely.
With goals versus process.
And so for anti-fragility, at a very kind of one thing level, if the process is continually asking yourself as you do difficult things, how can I be better coming out of this than I was coming in? That's the process. That's the process, because that's what puts you in relationship with struggle in a fundamentally different way. Now, I just want to put there's almost like a little asterisk to everything that we've talked about so far, Lison. And that is that anti-fragile, and the way I position it in the book, and the way that it is in service to teams. So I talk about self, others, and systems. And anti-fragility can work at all three of those increasing levels. But it's very much for what I call the tiny traumas of everyday life, right? It's for the paper cuts. It's not for when you've, had a major something and your limb is falling off. Like, sometimes we need professional support. Sometimes big stuff comes along in life and we need more than just the question, how can I be better coming out of this than I was coming into it? But what I do know through research, through my own lived experience, and having worked alongside teams and leaders, is that often we recognize that it's not the big stuff that actually knocks us out. It is the tiny traumas of everyday life that just accumulate over time and that deplete us. And then if something even mid-size comes along, it feels enormous because we're depleted and we don't have the resources to deal with it. So this idea of moving through life with anti-fragility means that we're actually always well-resourced, whether it's a tiny trauma like getting, 6 sets of red lights on the way to an important meeting, or it's something bigger that's come along. We've still got the resources to deal with what life is unfolding for us moment to moment and day to day.
Thank you, Paige. I think you did unpack a lot, and I know we can spend hours and hours unpacking more, And now, if people want to follow a bit more about you, I think you also mentioned you are writing another book. What is it? What's next for you?
So I'm writing a book called The Leaders Ecosystem, and this is it's a series of essays. It's 9 essays, because as much as I love doing a deep dive into something like anti-fragility or accountability, I find that actually there's so much disruption, there's so much complexity for leaders. They need a whole toolkit. And that's what the ecosystem is. So a series of 9 essays. It's coming out early next year. Just to give you a flavor, I cover anti-fragility at the individual, team, and cultural level. I talk about accountability. I talk about uncomfortable truths, which you mentioned in the introduction, and how we avoid the things that we don't, that actually are the things we need to look at.
Let's look at us.
In order to move forward. I talk about lead with love, and how we can have kind of love as our energy in the workplace and lead from that space, and still be entirely appropriate. And then I talk about true you, which is about your personal code. How is it that you find your authentic self in order to have the personal, portable psychological safety to move through the life and leading. Partnering is another one of the essays where I look at the power dynamics of leading and between teams, and look at how we can turn that from a figure of 8, where there's lots of doing leadership to people or doing leadership for people by micromanaging, and put it on its side into an infinity sign, so that we're partnering with people. And then the final essay is called Unbounded, and it's about how is it that we can move beyond ego and unbind ourselves from self-limiting beliefs, from ego-driven beliefs, and actually lead from a place of awareness and consciousness in an unbounded way. So that's the ecosystem, and there's an essay on each of those, and that will be coming out and available in March next year. But my website is the best place to go. There's something there called The Hub, which is a free kind of library of all the stuff that I'm really enjoying, and I regularly update that. So I encourage anyone who's interested to pop onto the website, and you can find out lots more there.
Love it. I'm gonna get this book. I love those snippet that you mentioned. Like Ling as well. See, like, thank you for sharing. Great topic. So yeah.
Thank you, Ling.
So yes, thank you again, Paige, for jumping with us on this Thoughts for Changemaker. Hopefully, a lot of people are getting food for thought, and they can start asking themselves maybe better questions or different questions that can already lead them to the path of anti-fragility.
That would be great. And please go take the survey. That's a great way to dip your toe into the water, and it's free. antifragilesurvey.com.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye, Lizom. Thanks, everyone. Bye.